Everyone, it's Ken Rakowski. It's just me today. Sandy's on some type of secret mission. Who knows? So today, guys, I wanted to do something to hang out with you to understand where my sweet spot is. My sweet spot is all around something called terrestrial broadcast radio, old school radio. And old school radio has not diminished or hindered or even fallen short. It's just as popular than ever. The biggest problem with broadcast radio is obvious, and that is they need content. And content is something they have a hard time getting a hold of because of all the podcasts that are happening out there. Most of the people with really good, unique content have decided to keep to themselves. They're not at radio. They're not going to traditional television. They're going to YouTube. They're going to podcasts. They're going to their own mediums. So I want today to explain how you, as a broadcaster, can leverage, or as a content creator or somebody with a message, how you can leverage what is going on out there. So I open every Tuesday up to everybody. It's not just a metal thing, it's open to everybody. And today we're going to talk about to understand radio. That's what today is all about. So right now what I'm going to do is this. I want you to realize that radio has not died. We have two different types of radio environments. We have the big city radio. So if you're sitting in Los Angeles and you're listening to KFI, or if you're in Chicago WLS, or wherever you're at, you have those big radio stations, and then you have those smaller market radio stations. So a tier one market would be the obvious. A tier one market, let me share. I'm going to share with you my screen. A tier one market is, here you go. Here are your tier one markets. Your New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, Dallas, Houston, DC. So you can look at right here are the top 15 markets. And these markets, as you can see, are the populations on the side, big markets. And these markets here are where people listen to traditional terrestrial broadcast radio. So let's go pick Philadelphia, right here, number 9. And Philadelphia's got 4.6 million radio listeners. That's what they're saying. They're saying the entire population is a radio potential listener. That's what they say. So if we go into Philadelphia, these are the radio stations in those areas. But by the way, if you notice, they're saying the radio market is actually 2.4 million. So we went from, let's go look at this again, from a 4.6 population to a radio market of 2.4, almost 2.5. And then they break it up. They go, all right, of this 2.4, 959, say 960,000 are Black, 432,000 are Hispanic. Believe it or not, Asian and Caucasian are considered the same. They're the same. So you see where the rest of the division is. And then when we look at Philadelphia, we look at April, May, June, July, August, and right here you have these point ratings. So WDAS, which is FM, it's a adults station, and it's owned by iHeart. They're saying in the month of September, they had a 9 share. And a 9 share means is 9% of the overall 2.4 radio audience was listening in September to WDAS. That's what it means, a 9 share. So as you go through this, you could see each one of these radio stations, and there's their format. You could see rock, news, public radio, adult, sports, classic hits. So you go down through here, you could kind of see where the Philadelphia market generally resides. This is the Philly market, the number 9th market. Now, there's a difference between a radio station and a radio show. So when we go look at radio shows, these are the top radio shows in America. And so you can see that you got Rush Limbaugh still dominates radio with about 15 million listeners. Sean Hannity, Marketplace, which is generally on NPR, another NPR station. Dave Ramsey, which is very, very interesting. I'll explain why Dave is interesting because he buys many of his stations. Morning Edition, another NPR station. Then Mark Levine, and you can go through this and see what the top shows are. It's top shows. So let me explain how a syndicated radio show works and why it's a very interesting model for today. How it works is my show, by the way, I was number 9 in the country with Business Rockstars. We had 3.5 million daily listeners. We were syndicated on about 300 stations. So 300 stations around the United States. We had 9 in Canada. We had 3.5 million listeners on a daily basis. And how it worked was this: no one bought our show. Every day we would give these stations around the United States, actually North America, 2 hours of content. And we negotiated a deal. We know that radio in a 1 hour talk environment has what's called a clock. And in that clock, there is generally about 16 minutes of commercial time. So think about that 1 hour clock. Here's that 1 hour clock, and 16 minutes of it is commercial time. So what we do is we do a swap for our content, which we're providing to them for free, for a piece of that 16 minutes of advertisement time. So what we negotiate is we generally take 8 slots of that, meaning 8 commercial 1-minute slots are ours. The other 8 are theirs. So they can go to a local advertiser, say a car dealership or a sporting activity or a concert. They can go to all of those activities and sell those in those markets. Now, us being a national show, we would go to a national broadcaster. So we would go to a Pepsi or a Hertz or a mortgage company. So we would look at a national, they would look at a local. So those are the 2 different markets. By the way, if you're joining us, hi Christine, great to see you. Sandy is out. She had to go on a mission for something, so it's just me today. Later on during the weeks, it's generally Sandy and I, but today I am filling the microphone. We're talking today about how to get your show, your idea, or you as a personality on traditional terrestrial broadcast. Christine, you have 2 books. You should be on radio all over the United States, if not the world. I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, I want to teach you at least what radio is. Everybody follow me on this? Everybody good? Good, good, good. So let's go back to that shared document again. So when we go look at these top radio shows, Rush Limbaugh has the same thing, a clock that's 16 minutes on most talk stations. Rush Limbaugh generally gets 8 minutes of those commercial spots. So there'll be a 60-second spot that the premier radio network sold. Now, what Rush also does is he does live reads. Inside his show, he might say, hey, go to salesforce.com. Now, that live read is not considered part of his 8 minutes of commercial time. Live reads are embedded inside his content. They get away with murder at times. So Rush Limbaugh will get those 8 minutes. Now, Rush's revenue sources, most radio revenue sources, radio shows, are the commercial ads. Or Rush sells his newsletter. Rush Limbaugh makes $80 million a year off his newsletter. $80 million a year off his newsletter. So Rush's true revenue source is speaking gigs, is his newsletter, and any other components that he's going to sell around that. That's Rush's revenue source. Sean Hannity, well, he's on Fox News. He gets paid there. He has books. He has his own merchandise, memorabilia. So in a lot of ways, these shows, these 2 top shows, use their radio show as a funnel to sell or market anything else that they're doing. And look at, they have 15 million daily listeners, or weekly listeners, which generally is about, you're looking about 4 to 5. Most of the time, it's actually always the same. It's 15 million. It's crazy what they get. Now, Marketplace and All Things Considered and Morning Edition, those are NPR shows, or APM is American Public Radio. They physically sell those shows to each one of the radio stations. So if you're listening to WBEZ in Chicago or KPPC in Pasadena, they will buy Marketplace for about $200 an episode. So if you look at the course of a month, they're spending about $6,000 to $8,000 to get Marketplace. That's one radio station. So imagine Marketplace, if it's on 420 or 500 radio stations, what Marketplace, as a nonprofit entity, by the way, that uses NPR as its base, can generate. It's pretty substantial. By the way, Marketplace is a great show. If you don't listen to podcasts, they should. Same things with All Things Considered. That is an NPR show that sells its shows to national public radio stations. So when NPR stations, wherever you live, do fundraisers, they're actually raising money to buy the content so you can hear it. And those are generally those shows that are syndicated. NPR stations that don't have a lot of listener support generally create their own content because they can't afford a lot of these shows. They might have one or two flagship NPR shows, but the other ones they don't. WBUR out of Boston and WNYC out of New York produce some of the biggest shows that NPR tends to syndicate around the world, which is really interesting. So we go down to all of these. Dave Ramsey's a very fascinating creature. Dave Ramsey makes almost all of his money on events. Dave last year made $800 million. $800 million. You're thinking, oh, wait a second, how does he make $800 million being on radio? He doesn't. He uses it as a funnel to sell all of the Dave Ramsey products, which are basically getting yourself out of bad debt or removing your debt, getting off of credit cards. So he's all around financial independence and financial freedom. Fascinating what he does. He buys flagship stations, meaning when we go back and look at these Nielsen ratings, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, he spends $1 million on each one of these markets to own his radio time. He physically buys the entire, I think it's 3 hours he's on in those markets. He buys that 3 hours, that's on 5 days a week, that's his time. Meaning he could elect to put a commercial in, he doesn't have to. He owns the entire 3 hours. Now, what's the advantage of doing that? The advantage is this. Dave Ramsey does an event every other week. It's interesting now with COVID, he can't. But to give you an idea, in Long Beach, which seats 14,000 people, he sells that out in less than 12 to 15 minutes, his event. For 14,000 people, they pay cash for his event, and they pay cash for everything they buy at the event because he only preaches a cash incentive business. You use cash, not credit. He's got an incredible deal he's got going. So he buys his radio time to get his radio visibility. It's brilliant, okay? So let me go back to saying hi to you. Hi, guys. Okay, so we understand what radio is, being the tier one markets. Those are the ones that I showed earlier, being number one's New York, number two is Los Angeles, number three is Chicago. It used to be that Los Angeles was the wealthiest, the most expensive, most viable radio market is because people spent more time in their car than anywhere else. If you're in your car, you have a higher propensity of listening to radio. Thing is, Spotify has encroached into that and podcasts have. So radio's got a little more creative. But I want you to at least understand that radio makes money by understanding who their customer is. See, most people don't realize that radio's customer is not the listeners. Radio's customers, the advertisers. The advertisers are the radio customers. Radio listeners, you and I, are its product. So we are radio's product. The customer is the advertiser. So radio's function is to make sure they create as many incentives for you to be listening so the advertisers can be heard, because that's where they make their money. Radio makes money. Other than NPR, NPR makes money through government and through, of course, subscribers. So let's remove NPR from this model. Let's focus primarily on commercial terrestrial broadcast radio. Okay, good. Let's move forward now. So all of you have something to talk about. Every one of you. Barbara's got something to talk about blockchain. Christine's got something to talk about Cat 5. And you know, every one of them, Bill or Will, Mr. Guy, you have something about employment. All of you have something to talk about. The thing is, who wants to hear it? And that's where the secret comes from. To understand how people want to hear what you want to talk about, we go back to Let me show you this document again. This is where it gets really interesting. We go back to this. Remember, we went and looked at the #1 markets in the world. These are the top markets. Again, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco. And remember, I touched upon Philadelphia. I just randomly picked Philadelphia. And if we go look at Philadelphia, and this is, again, the Nielsen monthly ratings. Remember up here, it shows us what our population of our listeners are. It's very interesting, right? So we know that we have almost 1 million Black listeners, almost 500,000 Hispanic. The rest are Asian and white. Remember that Caucasians and Asians, for some reason, in the radio market are considered the same. So the question is, who is your perfect reader, perfect buyer? You have to identify by knowing your avatar. I always want to make sure we teach avatars. So when I ask somebody, hey, who buys your product? You're doing coaching services. Who is going to buy your book? Give me that description, male, female, age. Are they, what kind of car do they drive? Avatar them. Tell me, do they get their hair cut as often as possible? Do they go to nail salons? On a vacation, would they pick a vacation that is like a sandals resort? Are they going to go something more hidden? Do they do the research? Are they a couponer? All of these things are so important to understand, because if you could advertise or avatar who your customer is, your buyer is, it's easier to know what they're listening to. Are they a country listener? Are they a talk listener? Because if you're not avataring them, you're kind of like literally throwing a net in the middle of the ocean, not even knowing if there's fish there. So in order to avatar, it's going to give you the opportunity to know what kind of radio station. Now, personally, I think I love what's called tier 2 markets. That's 1 million and under, meaning we go back to those radio ratings that we were looking at earlier. We go back to our Nielsen ratings, and we start to go down, 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 down. So these are what's called tier 1 stations. The top 50 stations are literally the top, the cream of the crop. If somebody wants to advertise a product or a service, they're generally going to go to these markets. These are the top. And by the way, these here might be the most expensive of all the markets, but there is a secret way to get around that. Let's go back to Philadelphia. Hey, Philadelphia, how you doing? Let's go over and open up a quick map of Philadelphia. And this is where it gets really fun. So when we look at Philadelphia on our map, and I don't know a lot about Philadelphia, I'm just using it as an example. I'm going to turn off we'll keep it like this. So this area right here is the main area of Philadelphia. I'm probably maybe doing a good 25-mile radius around this area. This area here is called the ADI, Area of Dominant Influence, ADI. This is where if you buy radio advertisement, you're trying to hit people in this area. Well, this is a tier 1 market. The irony is this Wilmington over here, tier 2 market. There's people that live here. There's a radio station sitting in Wilmington. The irony is a radio station sitting in Wilmington will bleed over into Philadelphia. You can buy a 1-minute advertisement on one of the top radio stations over here for about $1,500. Over here, it can be between $50 to $100. Guess what you bleed into? You bleed into their market. So the irony is when you look at tier 2 markets, tier 2 markets, if you're positioning right, they bleed into tier 1 markets. Right. And tier 2 markets are at sometimes 90 to 95% less than tier 1 markets. So what I did, I went and bought tons of tier 2 markets that bled into tier 1 markets. For example, Joliet, Illinois. I did a show. I bought 2 hours of radio time. I bought the 2 hours every Saturday morning. I bought it for $200. It was $100 an hour to buy the entire hour. So I had 2 hours. I knew that show that I made bled into Chicago. The ADI of that radio station was strong enough to go into Chicago. I sold my advertisement as if it was a Chicago station. So in 1 month, I would spend $800. Each advertiser, I charged $13,500 to be an advertiser for 1 month. Okay? For 1 month. I had 22 different types of advertisers. Over the course of a year, I made $1 million off of one radio station with a 2-hour show. Because of the way they bled into one another. Okay, I'm just trying to show you some big ideas. Now, let's go back to, by the way, is anybody got any questions? Anybody? I know I'm going fast. No questions? You can say if you do. Let me see. Aggregate your listeners. What about Sirius? I'm not going to touch Sirius. Christine, you just answer. Just answer. Just talk.
What?
Christine.
Oh, I was on mute. Sorry.
You are not on mute anymore, girl. Go for it.
Oh, I was asking, did you go out and do the sales yourself, or did you use somebody? And
I did myself. Let me tell you what I did. It was really smart. What I did is, it was really smart because I went with existing relationships. So what I did back then is I went to companies like Oracle. I went to companies like Microsoft saying, hey, I know you're in the Chicago market, but you are on a very basic radio station that's not really talking to your audience. I'm making a show that's talking to your audience specifically. So my show, because remember, the listeners are the product, right? The advertisers are the customer. So I went to all my customers saying, hey, I know there's going to be listeners. I'm going to make a show so the advertisers have a direct point, meaning I'm going to take the advertisers and make them guess, but make them so they're good guests. I'm going to have dialogue that will actually have link package to the advertisers. So I deliberately designed. Now, why is this important? Christine, let's just say, for example, you. And this is where everyone's got podcasting so totally wrong. First, you should not say, hey, I'm going to go make a podcast. No, go make a radio show and turn it into a podcast. Go to a tier 2 or even a tier 3 market that has 50,000 people. Get a radio show. Christine, with your background, you could do one for free without a doubt. You can go probably to a market that could be like Naples, Florida. Freaking super wealthy audience. You could do a show once a week. Do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't matter, right? Now you're on regular radio. And that regular radio show, you could edit and it's your podcast. So when someone says, oh, you got a podcast? You go, no, I got a radio show. It so happens to be a podcast. It's kind of like a blog. Remember the bloggers when they go, oh, you do a blog? You know, I write a actual newspaper article. I'm in a published newspaper or a published magazine. It's like at another level because all the bloggers came out and you got crap writing because anyone can do it. There's no barrier of entry. Radio's got a slight barrier of entry. So, and those, they call them cold markets. Cold market times are like when people go to sleep. There's so much inventory sitting there. They're literally repeating crap from earlier in the day. So for you to come out going, hey, let me do a show about how to survive the hardest times of your life. I've done 2 Category 5 hurricanes. I know how to do it. This is my format. This is how I'm going to follow your clock being your 1 hour clock. I know you do news at the top. I know you do commercials here. I'm going to give you my show for free. And if it does well, let's renegotiate, say 3 months down the road. And that's where you start to take some inventory and commercial time. And they're going to go, wow, awesome. You just alleviated one of their biggest problems. That is, they're not recycling any old stuff now. They're even newer now. And they're going to get all excited. And what they'll do is they'll go, oh, Christine Parakis, tell us about your show. You'll be on their morning show, their drive time show. And they'll talk about your show. Even though it's at 2 o'clock in the morning, yeah, gonna get some listeners. And it won't cost you anything if you do it the right way. But we're not talking specifically about that. Hey, Rick, why don't you unmute yourself and just ask?
It's
Come
fine.
on, Rick. There you are.
No, I was wondering if you could, how do you identify radio stations that in their specific content areas?
There you go. Well, let's do that, okay? So I just want you to all remember that radio is up for sale right now. Radio is scared to death because the irony is there's no new content coming out. It really, and the blue states and red states have very different feels. It was really interesting. I deal with a lot of conservative radio stations because they love talk content. Conservative talk works. Liberal talk doesn't. Matter of fact, there's not too many syndicated liberal talk shows. It just doesn't do well because the red states won't put it on, and that's where a majority of remember, radio is for what? Anything that happens now. Oh, a thunderstorm's coming in. Oh, a hurricane's coming in. Oh, wait a second. Did I just hear an explosion? Let me turn on the radio. What's the farm report happening today? It is for immediacy. So traditional radio is for people that want something that's happening now. Because what happens is the millennials, they search for it. They go on Twitter to do that thing. They would not listen to radio. So if you want a radio station, you want to make sure that you probably, if you are going to do a show, you generally will have a more conservative audience. By the way, conservatives buy everything. You can sell them, Trump's underwear from when he was a teenager or whatever, and they'll all buy it. I'm just saying they buy everything. My friend owns the Christian Broadcasting Network. The first year, they thought they're going to make $2 million. They made $5 million on just marketing and advertising. They made $35 million on merchandise. Because Christians and conservatives buy. It's really strange. Also, the difference between red states and blue states, according to radio mentality, is red states feel that they're more American. And let me explain why. They say that they're red states is because, and the numbers are actually on their side, that more people, soldiers, have died in war for the freedom of the United States. And they say the red states is because it's the red of their blood for freedom. It's pretty interesting, right? But they buy. But let me get to this idea of what you're asking regarding how to understand the radio stations, okay? So good question. Any other questions before I go any further?
I have a question. Am I
Yeah,
unmuted?
always.
Hold on. So do you have any issue with selling the tier 2 or tier 3 markets as a tier 1 to your buyers? Are they looking, or are they just taking your word?
So obviously, Christine, it's relationships right away, okay? It's going to be harder if you're a no-name walking inside here going, hey, I'm on this cowpoke radio station, so happens to bleed into that major market. It's going to be harder. So what you generally then is you sell on guests, saying, oh, you know what? Yeah, I've had all these insane audience or individuals on my show. They're going to, oh, well, they're on your show. So there has to be a reason, because if it's not location, it's your guests. And then it's also then who helps your show out. So for example, my show that was in Joliet, Illinois, which again was in Farmland, USA, I would have Gary Meyer, who's a metal member. He's inducted in the Radio Hall of Fame. He would come in and co-host with me. I would have Larry King pop on my show and co-host with me. And the reason why is Larry King had no idea what radio station is. He just had a big ego and he wanted to talk. So I made sure I had regulars on that even boosted and amplified my visibility of reach. Okay, just always remember that's part of the trick. So let's go back to this idea of what or how you get onto a radio show. Let's have some more fun. Okay, let's dive into this. I'm going to take you to a really cool website. I'm going to go to it. It is called Radio Garden. R-A-D-I-O-G, Radio, G-A-R-D-E-N. So it's radio.garden. Can everybody see it? Come on in, Radio Garden.
You got to fertilize it.
Oh, yeah, I'm fertilizing it. Trust me. Hopefully it works inside Zoom. I have had
I have
issues.
to run to a meeting, but thank you. This is very, very helpful.
Oh, no problem. Okay, I'm going to try it inside my Chrome. Let me see if I could get it working in Safari. I apologize, everyone, that it's not working. I've worked with some of the biggest names, guys, on this. And when I say big names, I've helped Apple, I've helped Microsoft, I've helped big names understand this marketplace a lot more. And let's see if okay, good. Radio Garden will work here. Let me pop on Safari. All right. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
You see the world popping in? All right. So every one of those little green dots is a radio station. Can you guys, can you hear the music?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. So as I zoom in, I get closer and closer.
89, you line up with the other boats in your class to embark on a race.
And if you
around
notice
the
right
world.
here, it shows me it's San Luis Obispo. There's the radio station. So what I do, by the way, I do all day long. I sit in here and go, oh, what's this? Oh, it's Bakersfield. Obviously, it's a rock and roll radio station. Oh, that's interesting. And what I can do is say, I'm going to go explore this radio station. By the way, this is a free tool, free app. It's radio.garden. So I want to go into, let me see, how do I go into this radio station? I can remember. So in this market, by the way, these are all the radio stations. There's some crazy ones. Look at this. This radio station is actually out of the Bakersfield area also. Let's go listen to what's in it. One of my favorites.
Best country and all-time favorites are in Bakersfield on KUZZ.
All right, KUZZ. I want to go there. How's that? So I'm over at KUZZ right now. Here's KUZZ. This is what I'm looking at. It's country. So if you're trying to get your stuff onto a country, hey, this is interesting. KUZZ, I like them. I want to go see who the on-air staff is. Look at, they put them all right here. Oh, very cool. So I could go see Cliff. So here's Cliff. Cliff's a real dude. He's a real guy right here. Cliff might even be a guy I'd love to be able to talk to. So he's a co-producer, as I'm seeing right here. Now I'm doing some research, everyone. I mean, this is when I do anything when it comes to radio. I'm sitting here going, all right, I need to know what their shows are. So I could see here. It looks like this is their music right now. I don't know if I see oh, here. Let's go to a calendar. So this is their weekend shows, and these are their weekday shows. So let me take this Cliff dude. And I'm going to go now and open. I am now going to open Twitter. And this is the secret of how you get around everybody. And I'm going to go search for that dude. I think that's him right there. Let's see. Yep, there he is. Yep, look at him. Award-winning Hall of Fame. There he is on this radio station. And what do I want to do? I want to send him a message. Hey, here's the irony. He's actually sent me something in the past. This right here gets over every single producer, every gatekeeper. It goes right to the host. And I say, hey, Cliff, I want to be on your show. I love it. I've written 6 books. I do this, I do that. Let's do it. All right. And Cliff, his producer, will literally say, hey, I just got a message from my host. They want you on the show. Producers got kind of pissed, actually, because they hate when they do this. But it's like the voice of God saying, Cliff just told me to book you on the show. Done deal. Twitter works that way. Now, let me show you one more fun way of doing this. And I do this all the time. I'm going back to our beautiful radio garden. And I'm zooming out. As we zoom out, this is what I go. I do crazy as shit. So I did an event last year in South Africa, and I needed to get a lot of people. So I'm looking at all the radio stations. See, I'm right now. I'm in Pretoria. Pretoria is right next to Johannesburg, and I'm going to zoom into these areas, and I can see the radio stations that are in here. And I kind of want something that's more talk. So I'm going to go down to the Johannesburg area, and I'm going to see if I can find a talk station. Let's see what we got here. Radio Today.
You're listening to the Regiment on Radio Today. Stay tuned.
This looks like it's a talk station. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little more research on it. I'm going to go to their website. Whoop. I'm going to go visit their website. Let's turn it off for a second. Oh, that's funny. Let's see if we can still do it. Come on. Oh, wow. They have actually errors on their site. So maybe not a good radio station. Let's try a different one. So what I do, by the way, this is where it gets crazy, everyone.
I could wish you paradise.
Oh, here we go. Here's a talk station right here. Come on, come on.
And teach us all.
Good.
You know,
It's an English station.
employer has. And unfortunately,
It's an English station. And then what I'm going to do is I'm here and we're listening to this guy right now. This is his show. This is his phone number. Guess what I can do right now? I could call him. I could be on their show like that. I do this when I'm bored at night. I call radio stations around the world and I'm on. And here's the irony. This is where it gets crazy. So if I would be a normal guest on a radio show, they'd book me for about 5 minutes. Hey, come on in and talk. If I call from the United States because I'm listening to a radio station, I could own almost the entire half hour. They'll keep me on. Ken Rakowski calling from Los Angeles, California. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Any one of you could be calling from wherever you're at. A radio station's on the other side of the world and just test things out. So let me just tell you, I called a bunch of radio stations in South Africa a month before my event in Johannesburg. We got 5,000 people to come to our event. 25% of them came from me just popping on radio stations. Free advertising, free marketing. So we got all of these stations. If we go back to this again, Radio Garden, and you could use other radio tools that are out there. Guys, look at all the radio stations that are sitting around the world. So I'm going to Israel next month in Dubai. So here, let me give you an example. I'm going to go to Dubai. I'm going to do this. I'm going to zoom into Dubai. Look. Probably not a good station for me. This is Oman. Let's see what it is. I'm going to find as many English stations as possible. And then what I'll do is, might be a little harder in UAE.
This Halloween.
See what we got here.
That's impossible. Don't get caught
Did you check the basement or the bedroom?
without the perfect thing
Yeah.
to treat every taste.
Well, that's it.
Let's see what we got here. I have no idea what the hell we're looking at. It's UAE's #1 top. So it's an Indian radio station. That's okay, but it's in English. So I need to find out more about that. And what I would do is I now would call that radio station saying, hey, I'm coming into Dubai or UAE this time. Love to come on and talk to you more. And they'll go, oh my God, we're honored. I will line myself up with 20 radio interviews before I even get there by listening to the market I'm going to go to. By the way, you can do the same thing. Harry, if you're going to North Carolina and you're going to be hanging out there, check out all the radio stations out there. They're going to say, you're from Los Angeles, you're coming out and you want to be on a radio show? You go crazy. So look at radio that's sitting out there and people would love to get you on. And I do the same thing. So Christine, I know that you're a doer. I know you just don't give up. You're relentless. So what do you got going on right now? It's very interesting. I would go down to, let me show you where I would go for you. This is a great example. Guys, is this helpful? I don't know. I know I'm speaking fast. Okay, any questions, just let me know, guys. Let me go back to share my screen. Christine, what I would do, Miss Parakis, right now, let me go back out here. Christine, by the way, everyone, first time ever meeting her, she survived 2 Category 5 hurricanes within 2 weeks apart. So where right now, Christine, are there hurricanes? Well, there's a hurricane in this area right now. So where do you go? You go to an area where there's a high area of English-speaking stations, which is the which would be the Tulum area. So let's zoom in. Let's see. This is Belize City. This is going to be English right here. Belize is
Among the land that Belize Rural North has, we are not encouraging our people to plant. And let me go on the land subject for a little bit, because someone is telling me don't promise them land.
So that's Belize, Christine. Let's go to the radio station. This is the Belizean radio station. They're about to get hit with a hurricane in the next 3 days. Next 3 days, they're going to get hit. So what I would do right now is I would go off and look at what their radio station lineup is. Here's their shows right here. We could see what's going on. There might be a host that you connect with, but you do a little research. This is what a PR company is going to do. Here's the host right here. There's this Brian guy. Do the same thing. You're going to go over to Twitter. Same process I showed you earlier. Let me go do a search. So we go find him. Looks like we found him right away. Doesn't look like he's done much. He's this radio personality, but he still might be using Twitter. So what you're going to do is, unfortunately, you're going to have to follow him. They will follow you back then because they're going to get an email going, holy shit, somebody just followed me on Twitter. And then they're going to see you're a coveted writer and they're going to be even more interested. Okay? But that's how you go through the process is you look for these markets you're going to venture into. So Barbara, you're focusing on blockchain. You're doing things around the blockchain space, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
So where are the more unique blockchain events? By the way, Barbara, I'm hosting a blockchain event, the Future Blockchain Summit, for 100,000 people. I'm doing in Dubai at GITEX the second week of December, right? How did I get into that? I started what's that?
How did you get into that?
I pummeled radio over and over again for 4 years saying, I know what's going on with blockchain. And the people in Dubai said, oh, I hear him on radio all the time out here. So now I'm literally officiating the entire event.
Cool, cool.
So what you do is you go to markets like Australia. You start to listen to radio in Australia. You do it probably in areas that aren't really busy, like Perth. Okay, Perth is a tier 2 market, even though it's the only market in Australia, in that part of the world. Find out where the cool talk radio stations are, and you start twittering the hosts. Say, I talk about blockchain, it's the future. This is going to put Perth on the map. So what's interesting about Perth, if you look at a diameter where Perth is, it's in a time zone where almost 40% of the world's population is. 40% of the world's population is within 2 time zones of where Perth is. So how many English-speaking locations are in that? So if you go all the way up north of Perth, you're going to have areas like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Shanghai. There's English areas right there. Find those radio stations that you're going to talk about blockchain. Because the problem is, Barbara, you're normal here. You have to go somewhere where you're normal. No, but you're blockchain.
No, I love that.
Yeah,
no, I love that.
You want to be uncommon. So go somewhere where you're a superhero.
Okay.
Right? So identify that market. And then you start talking your blockchain. You're this woman that knows blockchain better than most dudes. I can explain, but that's it.
Okay.
But you have to go identify a market that literally is on the other side of the world.
Right.
Some almost like wowness. Right?
Makes sense. Yes,
Christine,
absolutely.
Same thing with you. What I would do, Christine, is I would go to the Southern Pacific Islands of like Vanuatu and these areas that are sitting on that do get hit by insane hurricanes and storms, and talk about what you did to get through that. Or go down to Dominica, which is south of Puerto Rico, or any of the English-speaking Grenada, and find radio stations in those markets and Facebook them. So the Caribbean, South Pacific, anywhere that gets insane weather patterns, so they could associate with the way you talk, and then throw in the business strategies and then have them buy your online courses.
But how do you capitalize on those tiny little markets? Sorry, Barbara. Those tiny little markets to become something more or upsell into bigger markets?
Always remember that a buyer, no matter where they are in the world, is a buyer, right? And the goal is, if you can get, it doesn't matter if you get 14 buyers in Vanuatu, you get 50 buyers in Fiji. Let me just give you an example. Sandy and I do a private Zoom thing now for South Africa, and it's exploded. It's just people in South Africa, Botswana, in Namibia, in Zimbabwe, and her and I, we can make tens of thousands of dollars off of that audience, and it's an hour once a week now that we're doing just for their time zone. So we used a very unique, small, finite area to market something to them. And remember, don't price it. Here's the problem, guys. Tony Robbins is amazing, but he prices it so much in his tiered level that it gets insanely expensive. So you come in at $1,500 to go see, you know, his basic stuff. It goes all the way up to $150,000 if you want to be part of his platinum circle. Well, why go after only a few hundred or thousand people as opposed to tens of thousands of people? I'll give you an example. Barbara, you're a woman of color.
Yes.
I would go to Abuja and Lagos, find the English-speaking radio stations out there, and talk about blockchain out there in Nigeria. And then what you do is you offer an online class on how to become a badass person in blockchain, right? And offer it for $14 a month.
Okay.
Don't make it too expensive. Make it so it's lower bar,
Well,
bigger
I mean,
audience.
they also have different unit economics there as well. I mean, you
Well,
have to understand
$14
that.
is totally manageable. We
No,
think
that's what
about
I'm
this.
saying.
Yeah, and then you could, just to give you an idea, imagine getting 500 people is not, it's very attainable, especially in Abuja, not even Lagos, the second biggest city in Nigeria. 500 people from being on radio just 3 weeks, meaning they will probably have you come on once a week. Within 3 weeks, you could have 500 people in your funnel just from one city.
That's pretty good.
Just from one city. The
I like
problem
that.
is we're all trying to look in our backyards for business. We're trying to be on the big radio station in Los Angeles or in Seattle. It's the wrong approach. Go to
No,
the
yeah,
markets that are underserved.
Totally making sense, because like you said, those are people that A, need content, B, wouldn't normally hear you. Like if you're on the LA radio, they're not necessarily going to hear you on the little radio.
They're not, because let's go back to this other diagram, guys. I'm sorry I'm bouncing between windows, but I want you to understand. And let me go share this with you. So when we go back to our radio markets, come on, wake up. Oh, I think my system just froze. Come on. Ah, spinning wheel. There it is. Let's go back to this market here. So when you look at these major markets, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, here's the irony between that. If we go back to Philadelphia, remember that number, oh, come on, go back to Philadelphia. Come on, Philadelphia. Because everything's based upon a share. So I want you to go back to the top radio station in Philadelphia, which is WDAS, which gets 9% of the radio audience. That's a 9 share. That's only 9%, meaning there's another station that's grabbing 6%, 6%, 5%. So you're just one of 30 radio stations that are trying to fight for the 2.4 million listeners. So why do I love going to smaller markets? I could go to a place that has 2 talk radio stations, 2. I'm now grabbing at least 50% of the talk market in that small market, meaning they got one station to listen to or another station. If I pick the right station, I'll have a larger audience of that population. So instead of having 9%, I might be going after 20 or 25% of the overall market. It's easier to dominate. So look at small markets. Go look at Sioux City, right? Go look at Sarasota, Florida. Don't look at Tampa. Go look at Macon, Georgia. Go look at Waco, Texas. Talk stations will dominate and you're not competing against everybody else. All right, how we doing, guys? Is this, come on, give me some questions.
Yes, I'd like to follow up on the question that I posed earlier, a little bit about the specific content area. How do you identify, your niche market?
Got it.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this. And I'm trying to share things that are very simple. I'm not trying to go to a lot of different charts and graphs to deliver it. So let's go back to here. This really tells you a lot. So let's go and look at Philadelphia again. And I picked Philadelphia because I don't know this market. Anytime it says public radio, it's going to be hard to get on unless they don't buy a lot of public radio shows. Remember that. Generally, the top stations here will buy the full book of public radio, morning edition, marketplace, all things considered, wait, don't tell me. They will buy those. But if we start to look at something that's more talk, so as we're zipping down through here, look at this right here. This right here, Wpht Am. This is a talk station. It is all talk right here. It's got a decent market. So it's hitting 133,000 people. Let's go look at it. So what do? I do the same thing I showed you earlier. I'm going to go pop over here. I'm going to go do a search of this station. Here it is. And what I want to do now is I want to get an idea. So we know it's a conservative station right away. Done. We get this. Now here's the problem with conservative stations. They generally might buy the consistent flow of conservative shows. So let's go. Let's go look at the menu. Let's go look at our complete show schedule. All right. So here we go. We got Coast to Coast. That's a syndicated show. I don't know much about this show nor this show. So far, these two shows might be local shows. That's good. Rush, syndicated show, syndicated show, syndicated. I don't know what this is either. So my goal now is to find out what is their local show. So let's go look at this show right here. Never heard of it? Let's go dive into it. All right. So this looks like growing up in New Jersey. This might be a local show. Fantastic. Let's go find Reg.
Cool.
We're going to Twitter, and we're going to go talk to Rich. We're going to hunt Rich down. So once we know who we want, so like, for example, what do you want to talk about? What would you want to be talking about, Rick?
It has to do with diversity, inclusion, and equity. So that's one area, but it's also about the related things. This gets into the political domain about describing what fake and true patriotism is.
Which is great. Look at this guy. Look at this Rick. So we know now, look at this. Morning show, he is purely Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That's what he is, right? So I'm going to go follow him right away. Now, you have a direct link to Rick. Nobody else. So Rich is now going to be a direct link to you.
Yeah.
You got to play it tight. You have to have a freaking great message. So what is Rich's job? Look at this. Let me show you what's crazy about this guy. He has a show that's 4.5 hours long, or 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
He's got and this is how radio works, guys. Let me tell you, I did a 2-hour show every day. Let me show you what a radio show would look like. Let me show you what one of my formats of a show would look like. Let me pull this up. Hi, Sandy. I'm hanging out. We're good. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to give you an idea of what a produced 2-hour show. Give me a second. I'm almost there. I got to go through all my docs. All right, here we go. I'm going to give you, I'm going to share this with you guys. So here's my business rock stars. I'm going to show you, here's a Monday show. This is my script. This is going back 2005. Every day I would write a script, every day. So I would have a monologue. And look, if you notice, this is my quote that I'm going to use right there at the top. This is what my speed to cool is, myself. This is all my cues. This right here, come on. And you can see my guest is the CEO. Sorry guys, it's a little slow. So my guest today is the CEO of IMAX. That's my first guest here, and here's my second guest. This is for the first hour. This is going to be my monologue. I got it. Turn off. Come on. This is what I'm going to talk about in my monologue. All this is what I've written all before my show. Now, I'm going to give you a reason, Rick, why this all matters. So this right here, I'm still within the first hour of my show. I have not left my first hour. Matter of fact, here's my second segment now of my first hour. Look at all this writing that I have to do just to do each 15-minute segment of my show. Now I'm part 3 of my show. And now I'm still in part 3. Here's part 4 coming up right now. Wait, I'm not even done with my first hour yet. Wait, almost there, almost done. Up, second hour. Now, why am I showing you all this? Rick, that's every day. Do you know how much of a godsend someone like you is to come in going, hey, I'm going to help you find 15 minutes of content for free. Oh my God, you're a gift. But as long as you make it so it's relevant and perfect for the guest, going, I would just Rick, I was just listening to your show the other day and I heard you say this. Wait a second. You listen to my show. I'm in Philadelphia. You're not in Philadelphia. Yeah, I was listening over the web. First, the host is going to be flattered, ego.
Mm-hmm.
And second, he's going to go, great. What do you want to talk about? As long as you fit within his format,
Yeah.
you own at least 15 minutes. You know that is a tier 1 market. Number 9, if you do things the right way,
Yeah.
you'll get 5,000 to 10,000 people interested in what you're talking about. The goal now is, what is your resource you're going to move them to? Remember, last thing before we go. In every situation, guys, I want you to think about Cracker Barrel, my favorite restaurant. I know it's horrible, very hicky, but Cracker Barrel does something that's insanely brilliant. As you're driving down the road, right about 58 miles, you'll see a sign on the side of the highway. It says Cracker Barrel, less than an hour away. You go, ooh, I was getting hungry. Yeah, Cracker Barrel sounds good. And then as you're driving about 27 miles, it says Cracker Barrel, less than 30 minutes away. Ooh, Cracker Barrel. Ooh, I'm getting really hungry. I'm thinking about those grits, those fried apples. And then you'll see a sign right around 12 miles saying, almost there, Cracker Barrel. Ooh, I can't wait. And then you'll see a sign says, next exit, Cracker Barrel. All right, I see the sign, I pull in. And then what do you do when you go to Cracker Barrel? If you've never been to one, you go through a country store. You walk through this country store and then they go, let us sit you down. They sit you down, then you order what you want. And then they go, oh, pay your bill. You have to go back out through the country store. You go pay your bill. You might pick up some crap. And then you're out. Well, what do? They did 4 M's. They first moved you. As you're driving, they're moving you towards their location, moving. And they do it within every time, 58 miles, 27 miles, 12 miles, they move you. Once they get you to the location, they manage you through the process of going through the country store. You're sitting down, you're looking at the menu, you're thinking about the crap that you saw in the country store that, boy, I'd like to bring that back to my nephew. Got it. What do they do now? Now they monetize you. Oh, please go up front and pay for this through the country store. And then they go, oh, look at, besides buying the grits and the ham, they bought some crap ass soda and some big whatever, and fudge. They got fudge. And then they measure you. They measure that experience to tweak it just a little more. Movement, management, monetization, and then they measure and then they repeat by retweaking. So when you go on a radio show, remember, you need to be able to move them to something that you want them to go to. Yes, on my website, I have 10 more ways to make it so you can be more inclusive. Once they get to your website, make sure you manage their experience. Button here, click here, subscribe. Then what you want to do is you want to make sure you monetize that experience. Maybe it's by collecting an email name. That's monetization to you. And then you have to measure your success of that pattern. Movement, management, monetize, and then measure, and then repeat. Guys, my time's up today. I hope this was helpful.
You can.
I really appreciate your time.
This
We'll
was
be back.
so helpful.
We'll be back next Tuesday, Sandy and I, okay? So everyone, thanks a lot, and I'll see you all next week.
Miss you.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.